Today's spoiler video is brought to you by Card Kingdom. Use the link below to pre-order your cards today. Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another edition of Daily Core Set 2020 spoilers, and good lord, we have a million cards to talk about. They're spoiling like this entire set over 2.5 days, something like that, which means tons of new legends, tons of sweet cycles, new cards of all varieties, and we should probably jump right into it. Start talking about these sweet new Commander 2020 cards. And let's begin with a new legend, a Snake Leviathan, Cyrus the Writhing Storm. So Cyrus is a 5-mana Teamer commander. You get a 3/5 with flying. Whenever an opponent draws a card, except for the first one they draw on each of their draw steps, you get a 1/1 snake token. And then, whenever Cyrus deals combat damage to a player, you and that player each draw that many cards. Of course, you hit your opponent for 3. Your opponent draws 3. Sure, you draw 3. The upside is you're also getting those 3 snake tokens. So you can play this as a Teamer snake tribal commander, but really, the way this reads to me is a kind of more friendly, group huggy version of a wheel commander. So wheel decks are really fun. If you love drawing cards, at some point in your commander career, you should try a Wheel of Fortune Windfall, draw all the cards. I mean, Cyrus is insane in these decks. Let's say you play Cyrus, then you play Wheel of Fortune. You have 3 opponents that are each drawing 7 cards. It's not the first card they draw for their turn. So that means you're getting a ridiculous number of snake tokens. 21 snake tokens for 3 mana, which is ridiculous. Throw a doubling season in the mix and it gets even crazier. So this is the friendly way to play wheels, I would say. You can play your Narsets and try to wipe out your opponent's hand. The nice thing about Cyrus is, if I see you Narset wheeling, I am going to do everything in my power to kill you. If I see you Cyrus wheeling, especially since Cyrus might draw me cards too if you attack me, I'm going to be like, alright, like they're just 1/1s. I can figure out a way to deal with this. So while Cyrus is really powerful, I don't think it'll draw quite the immediate amount of hate that some other wheel commanders were. And speaking of other wheel commanders, the other unique thing about Cyrus is it's a wheel commander that's in Teamer. The 2 most popular wheel commanders are Nekazar, which is Grixis, Arjun, which is in Izzet. Cyrus adds green to the mix. So why would we care about having green? Apart from like doubling season to make even more tokens, shenanigans like that, green is the color of ramp. And having green in your deck is a huge deal. Being able to get to Cyrus earlier with Cultivates and Kadama's Reaches and Rampant Growth is very, very powerful. So I think Cyrus is actually a really sweet card. I also like the friends potential. Like, if we play a Commander Clash game, I'm pretty sure Tomer's going to be okay with letting me hit him with Cyrus if he's going to draw 3 cards. Like, I get to draw 3 cards too. We could team up, just draw some cards. I get some snakes. Don't worry about it. So Cyrus has a little bit of like Teamer group hug influence thrown in, but can make a ton of snakes, rewards you for making your opponents draw cards, which if you're wheeling, that's fine. So I think this is a really powerful, really fun Teamer commander, and one of the commanders I personally am most excited about building around from the set. We also got Acom, the Soaring Wind, a Jeskai commander, a bird dinosaur. You get a 3/4 with flying, and whenever you create 1 or more tokens, for the first time each turn, create a 1/1 weight bird token with flying, and then you pay 6 mana to give creature tokens you control double strike until end of turn. So Acom, I don't think this card's actually all that powerful. The way it's worded, you can make 100 tokens, and you only get 1 bird. So it's not really going too out of control. We were just talking about how a single wheel can make 21 snakes. Acom, it's always only making you 1 bird a turn, which is fine, but not really that exciting. I guess it could be the commander of a janky bird token deck. You got like Dovescapes and Ordered Migration, Migratory Routes, so you could go bird token deck. I don't think it'd be very powerful, but for a janky tribe theme, Acom is a good leader there. You can also kind of try to make it so you're getting 1 token each turn, but honestly, there's not a lot of good ways to make tokens during your opponent's turn repeatedly. There's like first response, the beginning of each upkeep. If you lost life during the last turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it, so you could use like Pain Lands to make sure you're losing a life every single turn to get a token every turn, which is going to be 2 tokens every turn. Is it worth the effort and the life loss just to get 1 extra bird out of Acom? I don't know. Angelic Accord, beginning of each end step, if you gain 4 more life, you get a 4/4 angel, would come along with a bird friend. Do you need a bird friend if you're getting a 4/4 angel every turn? maybe the easiest way to build around it is Drakehaven. There's not a ton of cards that make you tokens when you cycle, but Drakehaven, you cycle, pay one, get a Drake token, not a bird unfortunately, but you can do that during every turn, so it's coming along with a bird. Another easy way to go about it is spell slinging token producers like Young Pyromancer, Monastery Mentor, Murmuring Mystic. Whenever you're casting instant or sorceries or non-creature spells, you're able to make a token. So with these, Acom can actually be pretty powerful, sort of along the same lines of Kiker, almost. Maybe Kiker is actually just a better commander for that, come to think of it. But if you want to play Is It Token Spellslinger and don't want to play Kiker for some reason, Acom could be another option, and this is a way you could trigger it every turn just by casting Brainstorms, Counterspells, Swords to Plowshares, all those shenanigans. I think Acom is janky and fun, but I don't think it's an especially powerful commander. If it was worded so, whenever you made tokens for the first time each turn, you got that number of bird tokens, then I would be on board with Acom. But since you're only ever getting a single extra token, it just doesn't feel that powerful to me. So, janky bird tribal, weird styles of token stacks. Otherwise, Acom, I mean, it's fun, but not very powerful in my opinion. We also got a couple more pairs of partners. Terran in Sylvar, a Mardu human-y pair. And then we got Paco, Arcane Retriever, and Haldan, Avid Arcanist. So, Tyrant in Sylvar, I'm not very interested in them. Basically, it's a make a slow token on your end step with Tyner, then you can sacrifice humans, the token is a human, to make your Sylvar indestructible. Human aristocrat style commanders, I guess. I don't know. Not something that's very exciting. Neither card feels especially powerful to me. Paco and Haldan, though, are actually kind of interesting. Paco has haste. When it attacks, you exile the top card of each player's library and put a fetch counter on it. Some nice little elemental hound flavor. And you put a +1/+1 counter on it for each non-creature card exiled that way. And then Haldan, once it comes into play, you can play non-creature cards from exile with fetch counters on them and spend mana of any color. So essentially, this is a weird sort of master and puppy, dog and whatever human pair that kind of ends up being like a tally. You kind of build this weird tally. The upside is, you can cast these cards later in the game, so you can get in some Paco attack, store up a few cards with counters on them, then play Haldan and immediately cast those cards that you stored up earlier. A tally makes you play the cards right away. A tally, though, does have upsides. You cast the cards for free. So I think that Paco and Haldan is actually one of my favorite of the pairs that we've seen from Commander 2020. I think this one might actually be kind of a fun build around. Playing stuff off the top of your opponent's deck is powerful. A little bit sad that it's only restricted to non-creature cards. That does increase the whiff rate on your Paco attacks. Like, if your opponent's playing a deck that's like 40 creatures and then like 40 lands, there's not a whole lot of hits. That does happen on occasion, so it's going to be less powerful than a tally, but still a cool build around commander. We also got Selective Adaptation, and this card I think has potential to be pretty powerful. 6 mana sorcery. Reveal the top 7 cards of your library. Choose from among them a card with flying, First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Haste, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink, Menace, Reach, Trample, and Vigilance. Put one of the chosen cards onto the battlefield, the other go into your hand, and the rest go to your graveyard. So for 6 mana, in theory, you're getting one hopefully big thing on the battlefield, maybe a few other in your hand, and then also stocking your graveyard. This is clearly built to go with Cathril and other kind of keyword soup commanders, because the more keywords, different keywords, on the higher number of creatures that you could have in the top 7 cards of your library, the more powerful Selective Adaptation is going to be. You can do a little bit of work to set it up if you really want to. Sensei's Divining Top, Congregation at Dawn can put creatures directly on top. Same with Worldly Tutor. So you can set up one like Haymaker on the top of your deck, and then trust that you'll draw a couple extra cards along the way, and even just getting one really powerful threat out of Selective Adaptation, along with a divination out of the deal essentially, is going to make it worth its mana cost in a keyword soup style deck. Might also have some potential in other decks that naturally have big creatures with a lot of keywords, like Atlaplini where you're trying to polymorph into big things, Selective Adaptation could be a nice backup plan to generate card advantage, put things into play, because your big powerful finishers are often incidentally going to have at least one keyword on them. Dinosaurs, another good example, like Gishath, you're probably going to be able to hit quite a few dinosaurs because most of them have a mechanic Mile of the Anima. So I think Selective Adaptation, while it does require a little bit of work during deck building, you have to make sure you have a bunch of different keywords in your deck or it's not going to be as good, can be very powerful in the right shell. Getting a big creature for 6 mana, that's fine, especially if you're drawing a couple extra cards along the way. We also got Spellfire Phoenix, kind of a unique Phoenix for cycling decks. 5 mana 4/2 flying. When it comes into play, you get to return an instant or sorcery with cycling from your graveyard to your hand, and at the beginning of your end step, if you cycle at least 2 cards, you can return Spellfire Phoenix from your graveyard to your hand. And it might seem weird, this Spellfire Phoenix goes back to your hand. Most Phoenixes, when you meet their condition, go right into play, but with Spellfire Phoenix, that's kind of an upside. You can get it back, cast it again, get back another cycling card, keep looping through the cycling card for card advantage. So the downside of Spellfire Phoenix is there just aren't that many dedicated cycling decks in Commander, although maybe with Gavi and cycling support coming with Icorian Commander 2020, maybe that'll be changing. So I think it's great in like a Gavi deck, but you're going to need a critical mass of cyclers. If you just have a couple of incidental cyclers, Spellfire Phoenix definitely not going to do enough in a deck like that. But if you're playing a dedicated cycling deck, then Spellfire Phoenix can be great when you consider the options for getting back from the graveyard. Obviously, there's random like removal spells, artifact destruction spells, but some of the big ones, Decree of Annihilation, keep blowing up all the lands, Decree of Justice, you're getting a ton of tokens on repeat. Even Hieroglyphic Illumination, just to keep drawing cards, offers a lot of value. So I think that Spellfire Phoenix, while you do need to be in a dedicated cycling deck to even consider it, I'm talking 20, 30 cycling cards, and many of those instant or sorceries, in that deck, I think it has a chance. Being able to keep reusing your best cycling instant or sorcery again and again and again, for a relatively low cost, offers a decent amount of value in a deck like that. We also got Cartographers Hawk, and this might be one of the most impactful cards from Commander 2020 altogether. So Cartographers Hawk, 2 mana, 2/1 flying. When it deals combat damage to a player who controls more lands than you, bounce it back to your hand. If you do, search your library for a plains, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library. So this is straight up a ramp card for white. This is essentially the white Rampant Growth, as close as we have seen to a white Rampant Growth. And I think the big upside of Cartographers Hawk, along with having flying, which means in the early game, if you play this on turn 2, you should be able to chip in at someone. It doesn't look scary enough that your opponent's going to want to spend a premium removal spell on it, so you should be able to chip in at someone, get a land, then it bounces back to your hand, you can play it again, chip in at someone else, potentially keep ramping, which is very, very powerful. So compared to like Knight of the White Orchid, the downside is Cartographers Hawk doesn't do anything the turn it comes into play. Knight of the White Orchid comes in, gets you that land immediately, which is very nice. Cartographers Hawk, while it's a little bit slower, you gotta play it, wait, attack with it, then ramp, then recast it for 2 more mana. It is repeatable, so over the course of a long game, this is one of the best ramp spells that you can possibly have in a mono white deck, and that's a really big deal. Mono white needs better ways of drawing cards, it needs better ways of ramping, and Cartographers Hawk, I think this is a good one. If I'm playing mono white, I think I will have Cartographers Hawk in my deck very close to 100% of the time. I think it's that good, that impactful. Bonus if you're playing Bird Tribal, but really, this is just a white ramp card, the white Rampant Growth, and it is a very good card for Commander decks. Speaking of ramp, Cartographers Hawk, not the only ramp spell coming in Commander 2020, we get a couple of interesting mana rocks as well. One of them, Bonder's Blazon. I kind of like this card. 3 mana rock, taps for a mana of any color, then you can pay 4 tap it, and each player who controls a card named Bonder's Blazon draws a card. So, in theory, if you're the only one at the table with Bonder's Blazon, you just have a mana rock that can fix your mana and also draw you a card. Maybe there's a drawback that your opponent has when they get to draw a card too, but really, a 3 mana rock that draws you a card, I think it might be good enough to play. So it really depends on your deck. We have a lot of 3 mana rocks, and 3 mana rocks are worse than 2 mana rocks. So you're not only competing with Chromatic Lanterns, Commander's Sphere, Coalition Relics, etc., 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 you're also competing with all the Signets, all the Talisman, all the Mind Stones of the world, all the 2 mana rocks as well. So what kind of deck would want Bonder's Blazon? And I think, as far as just mana fixing, it's not that great. It is kind of the minimum, tapping for a mana of any color, but it's not super fixing, like Chromatic Lantern or Coalition Relic, which can double ramp you. But if you're playing a mono white deck, then your concern isn't so much fixing your mana. You just want to ramp. You'd be fine if Bonder's Blazing tapped for just white mana, but drawing a card is really important. So I think this is a mana rock that, for decks that struggle to draw cards, goes way, way up in value. If you're 3, 4, 5 colors, you probably want to play one of the better mana-fixing mana rocks that we were talking about. But if you're a deck that you don't really care about colors of mana too much, but you do care about drawing cards because that's something your deck struggles with, I think this might actually be one of the better 3-mana mana rocks available in Commander. So is Bonder's Blazing a staple? I think it's worse than a staple. Is it playable? I think it definitely is, especially in certain decks that really need more card draw. On the other hand, we got another mana rock, which has potential to be one of the scariest 3-mana mana rocks ever printed. Escape Reflector. So 3-mana artifact comes into play tapped. It has all the activated abilities of all lands on the battlefield, and you can spend mana as well as mana of any color to pay activation costs of Escape Reflector's ability. So Escape Reflector on level 1, let's say the entire battlefield is just basic lands. It's just a mana rock. It's tapping for a mana of any color of land that's on the battlefield. So worst case, you get just a random mana rock, kind of a Fellware Stone essentially. On the other hand, the upside of Escape Reflector is absolutely absurd. There are some lands that tap for a lot of mana. Nykthos, Cabal Coffers, Gaia's Cradle. Escape Reflector is essentially a copy of those, being able to tap for oodles and oodles of mana. More importantly, it can steal your opponent's copies. Maybe you didn't draw your Gaia's Cradle, or your budget deck, you don't have Gaia's Cradle. If your opponent plays one, suddenly you have a Gaia's Cradle too, essentially, in the form of Escape Reflector. The other thing that makes this really scary is it allows you to get around legendary cards. Say you have Gaia's Cradle, you can't play another one. Obviously, you're playing Commander, you can't copy your Gaia's Cradle or whatever, because then you legend rule yourself. Escape Reflector, it's not Gaia's Cradle. It just taps like it was a Gaia's Cradle. Same with Nykthos. So you can essentially have 2 Gaia's Cradle Nykthoses on the battlefield, which is really, really bonkers. And this doesn't even get into all the other activated abilities we have on lands. Academy Ruin stuff, Blast Zone for removal, Strip Mine. It's a copy of that as well. So I think Escape Reflector, has an argument for best 3-mana mana rock in existence. I think that the way most Commander games play out, the floor on this is just a random 3-mana mana rock that taps for mana of essentially any color, which is already fine. The ceiling on this is off the charts. It is absolutely bonkers insane, essentially stealing the abilities of all the lands on the battlefield. So Escape Reflector, if you are in the business of needing a 3-mana mana rock in your deck, I think this is the one that you want. It's always going to be fine, and in a lot of games, it is going to be one of the best cards on the battlefield. We also got Verge Rangers, which I really like this card as well. 3-mana 3/3 Human Scout in white. You can look at the top card of your library, and as long as your opponent controls more lands than you, you can play lands off the top of your library. Of course, still restricted by 1 land drop a turn normally, unless you have something else that breaks that. So it's not like, oh, your opponent has 10 lands, you have 3 lands, you're just like land. No. Nothing like that. So Verge Rangers, it's essentially basically the white Courser of Kruphix. I consider it to be a great source of card advantage, and I can see a reasonable argument for this as a ramp spell. I said that on Twitter. A lot of people yelled at me and said it's not a ramp spell, but if you don't have a land in hand and you're going to miss your land drop and you get to play a land off the top of your deck with Verge Rangers, you're technically +1 land on the battlefield compared to where you're going to be. So even if it's not technically ramp, in some people's opinion, it still makes sure you hit your land drops. And there's going to be times when Verge Ranger is putting lands on the battlefield that wouldn't otherwise be there, making sure that you can play all of your stuff every single turn. And I think this is a really good and white way to take ramp and card advantage in white. Like, you could argue that Courser of Kruphix itself could be a white card. Verge Ranger, it does have a bit of a restriction where you need at least 1 opponent to have more lands than you, which is kind of traditional for white land effects, land taxes, Knight of the White Orchid, ties. We were talking about Cartographers Hawk earlier. That's basically how white is able to get lands on the battlefield, is by having at least 1 person have more lands than them. But Verge Rangers, it's efficient. We've seen Courser of Kruphix be a very strong card card, and whether or not it technically qualifies for ramp or not, it definitely is a good source of card advantage, getting extra lands out of the way to hit your action, something White really needs, more card advantage, and it's going to make sure you're hitting your land drop, even if it's not technically ramp, it's still putting more lands on the battlefield than you would otherwise have in a lot of games, which is a really, really big deal. So I think this is another card that I am definitely going to try out in a lot of mono white decks. I think it does exactly what you need in mono white, and something a mono white has traditionally been missing. So definitely planning on trying it out a lot. Hopefully it's as good as I think it will be, and that it could be a mono white staple, honestly, in Commander. We also got Species Specialist, an interesting human warrior. 4 mana, 2 of it black. You get a 2/3. When it comes into play, you choose a creature type, and whenever a creature of the chosen type dies, you get to draw a card. So cards like Midnight Reaper, Grim Haruspex, Harvester of Souls are essentially Commander staples. They see play in quite a few different decks, and they do something very similar to Species Specialist. They each have different upsides and downsides. Harvester of Soul, really expensive. Midnight Reaper, Grim Haruspex, a little bit cheaper, and they only work with non-tokens, or Midnight Reaper deals you damage. Species Specialist, the downside is it only works with one creature type, which is a little bit restricting. The upside is it's a really powerful effect. It works with tokens, it doesn't deal you damage, it only costs 4 mana instead of 6 like Harvester of Souls. So I think that if you're playing a deck that has a lot of creatures of the same type, Species Specialist is definitely in the conversation. Also, you get bonus points if you can play it in one of its tribes. So Species Specialist, obviously a human warrior. Warriors, not a ton of different sack decks, but there are sack-based humans. Judith the Scourge Diva, Tisa Karlov, Tisa Orzhov Scion. These are decks that you could build a lot of humans into, and kind of a human tribal sub-theme that also is sacrificing all of their stuff, so then you're drawing a ton of cards, can even kind of combo off with it. Worst case, if you're in a tribal deck, you can play Species Specialist, and it's Wrath Protection, Removal Protection, giving you new cards when your old cards die, and you can also just play this in random sacrifice-based decks. I think you do need to pay attention to the creature types. Like Ghoul Color Gisa, I think that you could play Species Specialist in a Ghoul Color Gisa zombie deck, or I think you could build whatever random pseudo-tribal deck with Erebos as your sacrifice commander, or Temra in Rakdos. So you do need to have a lot of creatures of the same type, but as long as you meet that criteria, and you're a creature-heavy deck with a lot of creatures of the same type, it doesn't have to be humans or warriors. Species Specialist creature types, it could be any tribe, and Species Specialist is probably going to deserve a slot in your deck. You don't have to draw that many cards off of Species Specialist to make it worth it. Even if you get 2 cards, 3 cards, you're coming out ahead for your 4-mana investment, and then there will be games where you get to draw a ton of cards. Also worth mentioning, one of the other upsides of Species Specialist, it doesn't only trigger on your creatures. Obviously, it's hard to control your opponent's creatures. You can't choose their creature types, so you're mostly going to be playing it to name a creature type that you're playing heavily, but if you're named humans and your opponent incidentally has random humans die, you get cards off of that as well. So I think Species Specialist, while somewhat narrow to tribal decks, and even more powerful in human decks since it itself is a human, or warriors if you can work that out, is definitely a powerful card, a great source of card advantage, and compares well to other similar effects which are staples in the format. We also got a couple other free spells, the red and black members of the cycle. So the red one, Deflecting Swat, normally 3 mana instant, but if you control a commander, you can cast it for free, and you may choose new targets for target spell or ability. So your opponent goes to, I don't know, lightning bolt your face, you're like, haha, turn it back to you. Also worth mentioning, it's a red counter spell essentially to win a counter, or if your opponent casts a counter spell targeting one of your things, you can Deflecting Swat and redirect the counter spell to your Deflecting Swat, which will allow your spell to resolve. So kind of the red Force of Will, quote unquote, but only if you're targeting an opponent's counter spells. So I think this card is actually pretty good. I mean, free spells are always good. Deflecting Swat, while it doesn't have any like specific combo, is going to be a card that is worth considering in a lot of red decks. Meanwhile, we have Deadly Trick, which is just exile a creature for 4 mana, or free if you control your commander. This is another card that I think is just staple removal. Exiling is huge in Commander. Being able to sometimes cast this for free like a Slaughter Pact without the downside of having to pay in the future, also very powerful. So this is just a card that when I go to build a black heavy deck and I'm looking at my removal suite, I think this is just always going to be there, or at least very often be there, is one of my removal spells in a black deck, because free is good, exiling is good. What more could you really want out of Deadly Trick? We also got another pair of partners, Nikara Lair Scavenger and Yannick Scavenging Sentinel. And I haven't been very high on any of the partner pairs that we've seen so far, but this is my favorite of the bunch. This is a partner pair that I personally am most excited to play. So Nikara gives you a 2/2 for 3 with Menace, and whenever another creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had one or more counters on it, you draw a card and lose a life. So another Midnight Reaper style of effect, but only if your creatures have counters on it. So how are we going to get counters on our creatures? The answer here is Yannick. Yannick, 4 mana 3/3, has Vigilance, and when it enters a battlefield, you can exile another creature you control until it leaves the battlefield. Then you get to distribute X+1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures, where X is the exiled creature's power. So this is a way you can put counters on your team. And the first thing I thought of when I saw these is this is a perfect pair of commanders to play for like an Abzan +1/+1 counter theme. We had a theme from Khans of Tarkir. One of the main themes of the Abzan Wedge was +1/+1 counter. We have like Ivory Tusk Fortress, which just untaps all of our creatures with +1/+1 counters during each other player's untap step, kind of our own personal Seedborn Muse for creatures. There's Abzan Falconeers, which give all of our creatures with +1/+1 counters flying. So there's a bunch of different cards like this. They seem to work really well with Nikira and also Yannick. So they're perfect commanders for that style of deck. Plus you get some other just weird options. Abzan Ascendancy, Together Forever from Battle Bond, and then staples do like Dub League Season, Cathar's Crusade. So if you want to play a +1/+1 counter theme deck in Abzan, I think this is a really good way to go about it. Nikira generating card advantage is great. Yannick, a little bit weird. You can use the exiling, maybe aggressively to like blink and enter the battlefield trigger, but mostly you're trying to blink something big, put a bunch of counters on things, even more counters with doubling season, give all your team flying or whatever with Abzan Falconeer, and really just going to town. So I think this is a really fun way to play that theme, and actually a pretty powerful pair. I know I've been down on most of the partners from Commander 2020, but I actually think this pair in specific is one of the good ones and can actually be at the helm of a very powerful commander deck. Otherwise today, we got a bunch of other stuff. Not going to go over it super in depth. We got the rest of the Impetus cycle. Not really high on any of these cards. I don't think they are especially playable. Casually, if you want to, you like the flavor or something, go for it. That's what Commander is all about. But I don't think they have a power level that is really on par with the way I typically play Commander. Then we get a bunch of other random rares. Daring Fiendbounder. 4 mana, 5/1 with haste, so it is aggressive, but it has to attack each turn, so it's going to die quickly. And then you can exile it from the graveyard to put an indestructible counter on a creature. The problem is you can only do it as a sorcery. If that ability was an instant, I would like Daring Fiendbounder a little bit more. You could just like mill it or dredge it in your graveyard and then protect a creature from a wrath. Caprish Horde is actually really funny, and even though I don't think this card is good, it does add a really interesting element to the game. So green and X, you get a 0/0 that enters with X+1/+1 counters, and then you can pay 2 to put a +1/+1 counter on it and change which player Capricorn is attacking, and it can only be paid by the person that's being attacked by Capricorn. So basically, you play this, make it big, you attack an opponent, that opponent, if they want to, can pay 2 to put a counter on it and be like, no, you're not going to me, you're going to this person. And then that person could be like, no, wait, I don't want to get hit by this, pay 2, put a counter on it, it's going to you instead. So I love the random chaotic element it adds to the game. I don't think it's actually a powerful creature, but I do think it will be hilarious to see on the battlefield and just see how like the sub game of Capricorn actually works out in practice. Call the Coppercoats can make a lot of tokens. Obviously, a little bit high risk because it depends on how many creatures your opponents have. Tidal Barracuda, 4 mana 3/4. Fish makes it so everyone's stuff has flash, but during your turn, opponents can't cast spells. So having flash is good. On the other hand, giving everyone flash is not as good. So I don't think that I would actually want to play this card over like Vidalcan Orrery or Leyland of Anticipation. If I want to get my stuff flash, there's other ways of doing it that aren't going to benefit my opponent. Otherwise, Titan Hunter, just a random kind of like aggro human thing. Glade Muse is kind of weird. Normally green spells punish blue decks for playing at instant speed, Glade Muse actually wants people to play at instant speed. Whenever a player casts a spell, if it's not their turn, that player draws a card. Obviously, you can build a flash deck, cast all your stuff at instant speed, draw a ton of cards. That seems amazing. On the other hand, you might be up against a control deck that's trying to go draw go and counter your stuff and play at instant speed anyway. You might draw them a ton of cards as well, so it is a risky card. But in some sort of flash shell where you are playing all of your stuff at instant speed, it might be worth considering. Just be warned, it's going to benefit your opponent sometimes too. Agitator Ant, kind of weird. It grows everyone's creatures, so maybe some sort of group hug style deck, but then it does goad the creatures that grow, so you're not going to take damage from them that turn. Sawdust Demolisher, kind of a beast within mutator, stapled on a really big body. Still not sure how to evaluate these mutate cards in Commander. Are you just setting yourself up to get blown out by an X for one? Are they going to be really good? I don't know. I'm in wait and see mode, but if mutate is good in Commander, Sawdust Demolisher has a good ability where Beast Within is kind of a staple of the format. Anyway, I think that brings us to the end of our daily Commander 2020 spoilers for today. So what do you think about all these ridiculous cards? How good is Cyrus? How many snake tokens can you make? What about a Kim? Is that as bad as I think, or is there something I'm missing about that card? Our new partner pairings, which one of them do you like best? Which is going to be most powerful? Selective Adaptation, what decks other than Keyword Soup can take advantage of it? What about the cycling Spellfire Phoenix? How busted is our new ramp? How good is Cartographers Hawk? Is that the card that White has been missing to ramp? What about Bonder's Blazed? Or even better, Escape Reflector? How busted is stealing all the abilities of all lands? Verge Rangers, the White Courser of Crew Fix. How big of a deal is that for White's part of the color pie? Species Specialist, more free spells, all the other random rares we just talked about. Let me know what you think. Which ones are you most excited to play? Let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.